I think one of the biggest lies in business is that you're scaling, and when you're scaling and you're growing, you're solving problems. I couldn't disagree anymore. And in this video, I'm going to prove to you why. And it's probably, without this being an understatement, one of the most important videos I'm ever going to make because it's evergreen. It means it does not change. But in my experience, when it comes to growth, growth doesn't necessarily solve problems. It actually exposes your problems. And I'll show you what I mean by that. And this is this concept that I want to discuss today, which is the perfect scaling formula. How would you scale at any clinic? Because I noticed some clinics scale really fast, collapse, fail. The owners have burnout. And some clinics stay stuck and they have no idea how to even get to the next level, which requires completely different problems. All are solved in 4 simple steps. And no, this is no clickbait. I literally teach this in the protocol inside our program, and I'll show you this in a minute. I'm going to give you the tools as well on how to figure stuff out for your own clinic. But here's the thing. Thinking about scaling, well, we always say this, or I say this, I don't know if anyone else says it, but whatever it's true on the micro, it's also true on the macro. Whatever it's true on the micro, it's also true on the macro. What does that mean? If I have a practice and I have one clinician or one CA, and that CA cannot do, for the life of her or him, they cannot do a simple task like checking a patient in and checking a patient out, and I'm looking to scale from 100 patients, 100 visits a week to 200 visits a week, what do you think will happen to the current problem that exists, which is the reception person is not able to competently do those tasks for those 100 visits that week? Well, you're just going to scale the same problem, but you're just going to double it. So it's really important to pay attention to this document for you to understand that the clinics that fail to scale choose to just do things in the wrong order. They might actually be working correctly, but just on the wrong thing. And once I discovered this, once I understood this capacity cycle that we're going to talk about, every single thing changed. And now, if you're new to this channel, my name is Stefan. I have a clinic that does 7 figures a year. We've done this for the last 4 years consistently, and we have a team of close to 20 people. And life is good, but it didn't start this way. And now my journey evolved, and now we consult for clinics. We have an advisory practice called Practice Peak, which you can see here, and that's where we teach clinics how to build their dream practice, not mine, their dream practice and their dream life. And I'm a big believer in this 1% principle, which is we all can tap into that 1% of extraordinary if we just have someone holding our hand, or maybe have the right support system, or maybe have the right mindset for it, typically a combination of things. Anyways, let's get into the video. So this is important because, as I said, growth doesn't necessarily solve problems. Growth exposes your problems. And some of the top clinics that I've worked with, including our own, tend to think this one thing right. They follow the same principle. They follow the same cycle that we'll discuss in this document. And this capacity cycle, honestly, is a framework that changed everything for me when I was introduced to it. Step 1. By the way, when you get to step 4, I will have another suggestion for you to go and take your practice to the next level. And for some of you watching this, there might be even a document in this training material to provide you with one of the most important tools, which is step 1. And this is understanding your capacity. Step 1 is understand your capacity. Most practices, most clinic owners don't actually have any baseline understanding of what are their numbers showing. I know, I keep talking about numbers. If you've been to this channel before, you probably have seen my work where we're big believers in making decisions based on data, not based on emotion. But that just means that if you're busy and you're like seeing 60, 70 visits a week, and you feel like everything is going crazy and it's amazing and it's so good and it's so busy, but your capacity for the practice, whether you have 1 room, 2 rooms, 3 rooms, 1 bench, 2 benches, 1 clinician, 5 clinicians, it doesn't matter. The capacity is the capacity. So if you don't have a baseline to start measuring as an entity what your practice is like, as a room, how many people you can see, and I'm going to make it super easy for you to be able to work that out, because we'll actually give you the tool, then you're going to have serious trouble if you don't have your baseline. Busy doesn't necessarily mean I'm effective or efficient. It just means you have 101 things that need doing, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they need to be done by you, and it doesn't necessarily mean that your model, the way the business is set up, is right for you. And I'll explain in a minute what I mean by that. So I'm actually going to show you. So understanding your capacity, how do we start that? This is what we teach you on the inside of our program. So obviously I can't show you everything, but one of the masterminds we ran last year was this whole capacity thing. And we designed a capacity calculator that now we give away for free because it's just a tool. How you implement it, that's where people pay us the money. It's actually having support system, a network of people that help each other using these tools. We allow like a tutorial to understand how to use the tool. This is the exact same thing I use for my practice, by the way. It's not just a potential calculator. We have a dashboard and so on and so forth. But let me just give you this 10 to 15-second introduction of why this is magic. So again, remember the whole formula requires 4 steps. But step 1 is you need to know your capacity. You need to understand how to do that. The potential calculator has a bunch of stuff. Again, people that work with us privately, there's a lot more to it, but just to give you an understanding, and we're just going to assume that you're clinician 1 and there's no one else in the practice. And we're going to assume that you charge £45 per visit, per appointment. Time needed, let's assume you work in, I don't know, 15 minutes per appointment. These, by the way, these are just treatments. This is not new patients. This is not report of findings. This is not special appointments. We have different tools for that. Hours available. This is, again, hours available in any given week that you're treating patients, not. So, for example, if you have 36 hours a week of opening hours and you see, let's say, I don't know, 5 new patients a week and you have to do 5 reports a week, maybe get rid of 6 hours. So let's just put hours available to treat patients. Let's put 30 in that given week. Current used slots per week. So what this already has done is it's worked out for clinician 1 that charges £45, or the clinic charges £45, 15-minute appointments to treat patients in 30 minutes a week. The capacity, think of it as like a box, and we're completing the box, and the box can only get so full. It's up to 120 slots. That's it. That's the capacity for that particular thing. Let's assume current use slots per week on average. This is where a lot of clinic owners go wrong. On average, let's assume that is you're currently on 75. Look what happens as soon as I tap enter. Boom. It tells me everything about the data. So the blue is the stuff that you can change. The rest is auto calculated by this tool. So it tells me that you have 120 available slots. Let's say on average you see 7. And the reason I say on average is one week you might see 150, another week you might see 25. So you want to work out the averages overall. In your clinic management software can do that. Total slots per month, 516. Current slots used, 322. Your capacity is at 62%. Now, this is why this becomes very important if I go back to here. I wouldn't be in a hurry to go and start hiring a clinician if, and again, we talked about this in a previous YouTube video where we discussed the most important thing of what you do at the beginning of the clinic, care month, and so on and so forth, like that whole scalability thing. I do not want to be hiring someone if personally I haven't mastered the art of chiropractic, if I haven't created an amazing service and product that solves the problem for patients on a consistent basis. If my diary is not full and I start to, and you never ever want it to be 100% full because that's also very challenging to scale, but we tend to work on the 75 to 80% scheduled filled or utilization rate before we make a decision, how do we scale next? But this is the beautiful thing about this. If I ask you now, how would you, and by the way, you can see it creates you a clinic multiplier, which means I can 1.6x my practice if I just get this to 100%. Because what you can do is then you can go, well, what happens if I see 110 per week? So I've just gone from current here. I've just gone from current annual revenue having 75 visits a week to then going to 110, which isn't depending on the model you have, to 255k. Now, that is just a number. That's just a calculator. It just shows you how every single visit, every single adjustment, every single patient that drops off makes a massive difference to your business. People say I don't care about the money. People say I'm here to help people. Of course you are. But also struggling to pay the bills or struggling to build a team or struggling to have a practice that actually thrives is also a problem. So you have to have a conversation with yourself. I'm not here to do that for you. Is if you're here to help people, how many people are you helping if you have broken systems, if you don't have email sequences, if you don't have the right training with your team, if your patients get better within 4 to 6 visits and then disappear and they go and see someone else and say, Stefan didn't fix me. I think it's an uncomfortable topic, but I think it's worth discussing. Now, this is where scalability comes in hand, because let's assume you're at now 90% capacity. It's probably time to think, well, I have no gaps in my diary. What is it that I do? We have a few options. Option one is, do I increase the effectiveness of how I treat or improve the systems or hire a CA so I don't have to spend 15 minutes per visit? I can spend maybe 10 minutes because now she books them. She does all the schedules. She does all the financing and everything that you don't need to do at some point. So if I just go from 15 to 10 minutes per visit, it increases your capacity from 120, it just went to 180. So you've gone from almost full diary to the rim, you can't fit anyone else in, to now you're back to 60%. So what I can do is then I can go, well, maybe I can learn the skills to be a better adjuster. Maybe I can learn the skills to create a system so I have a rehab schedule for this particular patient because I've invested in technology and I've uploaded every single person into the app so they can get my exercises at the right stage of their program. So what that means is I can allow myself to have more adjustments for that week, more visits that week, and and this is the most important thing, and the client and the product and the service and the delivery and the result they get do not get compromised. So let's assume we get to 150. Look at that, you have a 350k clinic, just yourself, maybe a CA at this point, and you're still at 80% capacity. But that's just one way. What you can do is you can go, hey, you know what? I'm done now. Like, I don't want to get any more busy. What you could do, this is one advice. Some people say, well, I only work 30 hours a week. I would just want to pick up an extra shift and do 36 hours a week, which is still, by the way, not like crazy busy. All of a sudden, you've got 216 slots available. So you can see how the formula for you to be able to understand the capacity makes a huge difference to your decision making about the clinic and where you want to take it. And if you're watching this and you're starting to feel a little bit overwhelmed, good. It shows me that you haven't necessarily thought bigger. And someone told me this, one of my first mentors told me this. He said, Stefan, I think we need to upgrade your thinking. Ooh, that hurts so much because I thought at the time I was doing really well. And when someone says that to you, you have two options. One is, I'm going to get defensive, or option two is, what is it that they know that I don't know? So this is super, super interesting to me. You guys might not find it interesting, but for me, this has been an absolute game changer. Let's assume we then want to hire our first clinician and we want them to start on, let's assume 15 minutes because they're newer, or even 20 minutes. Let's say they work the same amount of time as you do now. Look at this. All of a sudden, as a clinic, now this is where this becomes a super useful tool. As a clinic, they increased your capacity, but also it increased the multiplier, so you can still 1.5x, 1.44x your practice because you're only operating at 41% capacity because they've got literally an empty diary. But what you can do is you can get them to 50 visits a week. You can then get them to 80 visits a week, or they can get themselves to, eventually they will be on 100 visits a week if you have a great model. And so all of a sudden, your practice is like making really good money. You're a little bit more relaxed. You might want to choose to buy back your time, and you might want to scale down to 30 hours a week. And you can see how this tool becomes the foundation of you making decisions about scaling. This is step one. You have to understand your capacity, because before you get to step two, if you skip step one, it's going to be a challenge for you. Step two is, how do I maximize my capacity? So again, we talked about this. Do I increase the number of benches I have? Do I increase the marketing spend? Do I increase the amount of outreach events we do each year? Do I start to do leaflet campaigns? Inside my Practice Peak community group, I believe we have at least 12 new patient acquisition channels of how you can get more new patients. And a lot of it's simple, not easy, simple stuff that we just avoid doing, but we know we should be doing it. Maximizing capacity is, you have to be mindful. Unless you understand your capacity, you don't want to, it's like opening a second restaurant when half the tables in the first one are empty. So this calculator becomes an extremely useful piece of tool to help you with your decisions. But it makes no sense for me to open a second restaurant if I've not maximized my capacity in the current place. So you have to ask yourself, what am I building? What am I maximizing? And how am I doing that? Especially if you don't have your numbers, especially if you don't have tools like this, everything becomes so much more difficult. Once you have this, things become much more scalable, much more predictable, and much less like, I can breathe. So we understand our capacity by using the calculator. We maximize our capacity by increasing marketing, increasing conversion rates, increasing retention rates, having a maintenance program, having a membership matrix. We talked about this in some of our other YouTube videos. If you haven't seen that, Please go and watch it. I discuss how we build this ecosystem of memberships that is predictable and repeated, which means the business is much more sellable. It means that patients are much more stable. It means that people don't have to book every time they come in. So the girls in the front desk are not overwhelmed with admin. And when we are able to maximize our capacity, like I showed you here, let's say you get to like 80%, then it's time to increase our capacity. And the way you increase it, because eventually everything will be a ceiling, you can do that through another chiropractor, through exactly the strategies we talked about, through increasing the number of slots you have by increasing the amount of hours you work, or decreasing the treatment time because you've improved the systems. So the beauty of this is everything becomes so predictable if I get that first step right. And if you don't get the first step right, you cannot ever get to step number 4, which is repeat. Just repeat the whole thing, the whole cycle. And for me, the part that people miss is this one, understanding your capacity, and step 4, which is just rinse and repeat. Now, the big lesson here is this. If you've made it so far, congratulations. But the big lesson for me is scaling is not about doing more stuff or working harder. Scaling is about having transparency of what does the actual business do, what are the individual elements to make that business do those things, and it's just about removing bottlenecks. Because those clinics that I've seen can never grow, it boils down to the clinician or the founder's ability to just not invest in themselves, in creating different identity for themselves as they scale the practice. Because what got you, and we talked about this in the previous video, what got you from 0 to 10K a month, there's no way that same way of thinking, those same systems, those same protocols, the same procedures, that same standard, there's no way it can get you from 90 to 100K a month. So there's less guessing. We need to stress less and actually understand our data more. And one thing I've noticed that most clinic owners lose patience is even before the treatment starts. So let's say you understand your capacity. The second step when you maximize it is to understand, how do I get people to actually start care if I truly believe that this is the right thing for them and they know it's the right thing for them. So if you enjoyed this video, I want you to go and watch the next one, which is the number one mistake that people make and how they lose their patients way before patients even start care. Because this whole concept doesn't apply if your product and your service is not great.